you won't get the things that you want if you're not willing to tell people about what you do. There is no more being the best kept secret, because I promise you, if you're trying to make impact with your work, impact means that people know about what you do. Have you been thinking about the potential of your dissertation? What if I told you that your next consulting opportunity, your next career opportunity, or even the impact that you want to see out in the world with your research is one step away? Once you know the information and insight on how to position yourself as a researcher in your dissertation work for impact and income. If you're interested in that, watch today's episode, because on today's episode from ABD to PhD show, I'm going to talk about how to position your dissertation for income and impact. My name is Dr. Ramon Goings, and I'm founder of Done Dissertation. And our goal at Done Dissertation is to help you write and defend your dissertation in record time. Today's episode from ABD to PhD show is sponsored by the Done Dissertation Velocity Coaching Program. And our program is centered with giving you the tools and resources that you need to write and defend your dissertation quickly. So if you're someone who needs that hands-on support, need that mentorship, need folks looking at your work, really give you the insights on how to navigate this process, make sure that you reach out to us to learn more about our program at www.velocitydissertation.com, or you can scan the QR code that you see here on your screen. But with that said, I want to get into today's episode, because when we think about how we want to, generate impact in income from our dissertation, I think right now as a doctoral student is a great time to start actually positioning yourself in order to do so. But I think it takes some unique skills and some belief shifts that will be needed for you to be able to do so. And literally today's episode, I'm trying to give you the game ahead of time so that you know what's coming up and some things that you may encounter as you're trying to do this. And so the first thing I want you to consider is that if you're trying to position your dissertation for income and impact, first things first, you have to be willing to put yourself out there. Look, I know if you're watching this episode, you might be like me. I myself am an introvert, right? I do this content, but by true nature as an introvert, I rather be inside somewhere relaxed, chilling. But, I recognize that as a researcher, if I'm looking to have impact with my work, I had to be willing to put myself out there. That's how Done Dissertation started. Initially I was doing this, but offline. I wasn't talking about it to anybody. I was just working with students who came from my university where I got my doctorate, as well as some other folks through word of mouth. But I really got some people kind of told me, well, you need to start talking about it more and putting yourself out there. And I didn't recognize the power of that because I wanted to not do that. I know for you, you might be thinking, well, you're maybe shy or you don't want to, put yourself out there. But I promise you, you won't get the things that you want if you're not willing to tell people about what you do. And that's even with your dissertation work. So you have to be willing to put yourself out there. If you have the mindset that you want to be the quote, the best kept secret, you will just become the unknown person that doesn't have their work out there to the masses. Because if you think about your favorite researcher or thought leader, they have put their work out there in some venue where the people that could benefit from the work can consume it. So let's say, for instance, researchers, right? We're of course going to write for journal publications because that gives us a certain reach and a certain marketability and kind of quote clout, if you will, in higher education. But some of our other thought leaders, like for instance, Renee and I've been listening to some Mel Robbins. Mel Robbins has a podcast that I listen to, and she's also writing books. Like she's putting her work out there in places where people like myself who actually could consume it and want to learn from her can take it in. So it's just being mindful of, like, you have to be willing to put yourself out there. There is no more being the best kept secret, because I promise you, if you're trying to make impact with your work, impact means that people know about what you do. But again, if you're trying to sit in the lab and that's all where you want your work to be, that's what will remain. You have to be willing to put yourself out there. And there are a number of ways to do it, right? So let's say, for instance, if you truly are, shy, and camera might not be your best way to put yourself out there, that's fine. You can do written words away. You might even do just audio. So maybe you have a podcast of some sort that you're putting your audio out there. Whatever medium works for you. It's either going to be written, video, or audio of some sort, or some mix of those that you're going to get your work out there. So figure out what it is that you like to do and that you're willing to do consistently. And that's going to be important. But again, if you're not willing to get over this mindset shift of putting yourself out there, it will, the reward that you want from the impact of your work won't go. And this is something I had to learn. I just had to put myself out there, and I've gotten more comfortable, right? I find that like writing, the more you do it, the more you get comfortable. The more you get comfortable, the more likely you are to do it. And I say it's the same thing with putting yourself out there. Now, the next aspect, if you're looking to, turn your dissertation and position your work and yourself as a researcher for income and impact, the second part is that you're going to have to develop your ability to translate your research. Look, y'all, let me tell you this one thing. If you cannot translate your work, the impact that you can have will be very limited to those who can understand the research jargon that we are trained in. I promise you. So you're going to have to get very good at and develop your skill set on translating your work. This is one of the things that, if I had any gripes with just doctoral education generally, is that we don't often teach our students how to then translate the research that they're doing. So what ends up happening is that, like you probably, very great, understand the literature, can talk about the theories, can integrate, have those scholarly conversations. But when you have to encounter someone who knows nothing about what you do, and then you have to explain it in a way that they can grasp and understand it, you may experience difficulty. And I see a lot of doctoral students and early researchers generally, it's not even early career issues. This is researchers generally. When you ask them what they do and they go on to this thing, it's like, well, I'm not in your discipline. How would you explain it to me? Or, being able to take what you do and translate it to an audience that cares about what you're doing. Like, for instance, if you're doing work, your work probably intersects maybe with policy in some way, but the policymakers are not researchers, so they're not always going to go to those venues like your peer review publications to read your work. However, they might read, or think about your work if you're able to put it out there and translate it into maybe brief white papers that explain it, explain your research to a lay audience, or you're able to connect your work to what they have going on. If you're able to translate your work, that skill set is golden. That is one of the things that allows you to not only position yourself as a researcher within higher education, but within like non-academic careers, because they are looking for people who have the terminal degree but are able to translate that work. If you want, there's an episode I have on our office hour show with Dr. Gertrude Nantra. If you check out that episode, go to the Dissertation Office Hours playlist on YouTube, and then go to Dr. Nantra's episode, and she talks more about how she does that in terms of translating her work to a wider audience. Because I promise you, you have to be able to translate your research if you want to make impact. Because there's nothing worse than the people who you wrote the work for, or the organizations or communities or whatever it is that you're doing, for them not to be able to understand the research. But it takes for you to be able to translate it. I'm not saying to not do the research. I always am about like getting those peer review stuff out, because I know that's how higher ed works, and you need that support, and that positions you as an expert in many ways. However, the other side of it is that you have to be able to and willing to translate your work. And this is somewhat of not a new way of thinking, but a lot of professors who may have been in the game for a while may not have this approach. They might just always have their work centered within the academy. And so you may run into some opposition as you're trying to translate your work. But promise you, listen to me. I'm someone who is in higher education. I'm a tenure faculty member. As of this time of this recording, I'm actually a department chair. So I understand this from all those vantage points. And I'm telling you, go ahead and make sure you get that other skill set of translating your work. And what that means, you might need to find a mentor. You might need to find and look at people's work who do this well. This is something we teach in our Velocity program, because we find that for a lot of our folks, we want people to be able to have an ROI on their investment working with us in our program. And one of the ways to do that is be able to position their work and be able to translate it. And so this becomes really important. And if you're someone that is looking and need coaching support and need help like that to not only be able to translate your work, but to get through the dissertation process, I'd invite you to just scan this QR code that's here on your screen, or go to www.velocitydissertation.com to learn more about the Velocity Coaching Program and how we can get you to the finish line. Now, back to the content. So once you are able to develop your ability to translate your work, the other piece that you're going to have to do in order to position your dissertation for impact and income is you're going to have to begin writing for venues outside of academia. Your ability to write, in particular for venues outside of academia, is going to be paramount to you having this, income and impact that you want to have with your work. Because don't get me wrong, if you're trying to become a faculty member, you're going to have to write for journals and books and do all those things for academia, right? That's part of the currency. That's how you get promoted and tenured and all those things. I'm not saying not to do that. However, if you're looking to make impact with your work to a larger audience, you're going to have to write your work outside of higher like academia, in particular like the journals and those types of things, because those where those other venues are where the people that have the funds to pay you are where they will sit. All those or CEOs of companies, all of those nonprofit leaders and folks, they read those trade publications. So you want to take opportunities to actually write for those venues. For instance, like I do a lot of work on the dissertation process, and I have a new book coming out called it's called The Finish System, right? And it's for faculty. And if you want to learn more about the Finish System, here's a QR code that you can learn more about it. So, if you are, I'm writing this book for faculty on the Finish System, how to chair as a faculty member, right? But in order to help and get my work out there to a wider audience, I also write for trade publications that I know faculty members will read. So one of those I write for is Inside Higher Ed, because they have a large audience of people who are my ideal audience for my book. So I write a lot of content for them, because I want to get in front of those people. That's really important. You're going to have to figure out ways to write for venues outside of academia. One way I used to do this, and I don't do this as much anymore for my work, but when I was trying to really like position myself as a pre-tenure faculty member, is that every journal article that I wrote, I would find some venue to translate that work and write for an op-ed or some other form of writing for that other publication. It became very, very helpful for me, because it gave me an opportunity to practice that skill set. But then also it put my work in spaces that people eventually would bring me in to do consulting. There was one organization that I worked with as a consultant based on my research skill set, only because they had read my work that I was writing at the time about Black men at HBCUs in this trade publication that was talking about the work and insights that I had from doing the research. Had I not written that, I wouldn't have gotten that opportunity. So these are the things that I want you to consider now while you're still a student, because it's not a challenge when you have your doctorate in doing this, but it's great to have a springboard into it. I think sometimes we wait too long, and then you feel like, oh my God, it's not happening fast enough. Like now is the time to start positioning your work in that way so that you can have the income and impact that you want. And then when we consider the last thing I want us to consider on today's episode, that's going to be really important for you if you're looking to have income and impact from your dissertation, is that you're going to have to connect and figure out ways to connect your research to current events. Because one of the things that you're able to take advantage of, particularly if you're going to interact with the media, is that you have to be on top of current events that are happening. So if there's a trend or if there's something happening in the media that your research overlaps with, you should definitely be putting yourself out there to discuss. For instance, I'm gonna give you one that's currently happening, right? That within the next couple of months, we probably should hear something about from the Supreme Court. Let's say the TikTok ban. The fact that that's up for Supreme Court, if you're someone who does research around social media or around social movements or around the impact of, government on, business or something like that, if that's your research area, you should be all over and exploring this. Or if you're a legal scholar and interested in this type of thing, you should be translating your work for venues that want to write about these issues. You can easily, because of these, the heightened awareness of this particular issue, could write in the New York Times, LA Times, like Washington Post, like those big venues. There are opportunities there because your work is timely. But if you're someone who's looking to make impact income from your work, your timeliness has to be key, right? Because you can't write about an issue that happened 4 months ago. Like the way the media works, if you're really trying to position your work and position you to make the impact income, you're gonna have to be like right on top of it. So like within a 2 hour, 2 day span, you need to be writing for whatever's trending. It becomes a little like, let me see what it is and make sure it applies. But again, this is why when you have your dissertation focus and your research agenda, again, when you have an agenda, you're not going to do and take advantage of every current event, but you're going to take advantage of the ones that are particular to your subject area. One of the ones I did recently that went viral, which is interesting, was because I kept seeing this trend on social media around all of these folks getting these, what do you call them, honorary doctorates. And there was one person who was on a television show, and I just couldn't believe that they had gotten this honorary doctorate. And I kept seeing this thing popping over and over, and they were referring themselves as doctor, and all these issues with that. So I put out some insights about honorary doctors and the challenges of those, and the murkiness of them. That was timely because this thing had happened within like the 24 hours of me seeing this particular television celebrity, if you will, talk about this honorary doctorate and talk about themselves in a certain way. So these are the times you have to be able to take advantage of them. But if you're not willing to do those things, it's going to be really challenging for you to make the impact in income. And then lastly, I'm gonna give you a bonus one, because I think this is important. Don't be afraid of making money from your work. Here's what I've come to understand. There are certain perspectives from folks who have earned a doctorate that almost feel like, the work that you do should be given out for free. And there are spaces to provide, your expertise to at low or no cost, right? I'm not saying I do that all the time, but there's nothing wrong with also making an income from your work. Like, if you think about it, you've invested hundreds of thousands of dollars of yourself in your education. If we add up all the money you've done in undergrad, your master's program, your doctorate, you've probably put at least $300,000 into yourself in some form, whether it's actual money, whether it's, even just, opportunity costs from being in school so long. All these things add up. So don't be afraid. I think it's important. And that might be a mindset shift you're going to have to make. And you're going to run into people who have that kind of vow of poverty type of mindset around this work. And if you run into that, you're going to have to shift and talk to other people who get it. Because it's going to be a certain group of people who really understand this. And for me, I'm like, we can make an impact and we can make income. I think those both can happen. And I think, everybody has a role, right? And we should be able to put our work out there and change the organizations, the individuals and communities we care most about. But we can't do that if we don't have the income to support ourselves, right? It goes hand in hand. So I think this is something that I really want you to be mindful of as you're going through this. But I wanted to share this because a lot of times as we're thinking about, the dissertation process, I want you all to be thinking forward about how do I prepare myself for life after? And this is something that we do in our Velocity coaching program. We have professional development for our clients each month that cover some aspect of something that's going to prepare them for life after the dissertation process. And so if you want to be in an environment where you're not only getting the help to write your dissertation and to navigate the politics of your program, but getting support around positioning yourself for the next phase after you finish your doctorate, I want you to lock in with us and consider joining the Velocity coaching program. And to learn more about the program and schedule your complimentary consultation, you can go to www.velocitydissertation.com, or you can scan the QR code that is here on your screen. Because again, I want to see you all win. I want to see you all get these doctorates done. I want to see you all make impact with your work, make an income, and do what you want to do with your life as a result of finishing your dissertation. That's the only reason why I do all this content, is to give you all insights, because I could do a lot of different things, but I really want to give you all the game of terms of how to navigate this thing and how to get out of the process. But I think it's important as a doc student is that we start thinking about the future. I want y'all to write your dissertation. Like, you can look at all of our content to see that we are focused on aspects of navigating the process. But I also want you to be future oriented and thinking about, what does life look after I finish this thing? And that's why I did today's episode on how to position your dissertation work for income and impact. If this has resonated with you, do me a huge favor. Hit the share button. Share this with 2 or 3 people that you know that can provide get value out of this. And if you're watching this on our YouTube channel, hit the like and subscribe button. And then also, if you have us on our various social media platforms, you watch us on LinkedIn or Facebook, make sure that you follow us on those platforms as well. Again, I want to say thank you so much for watching this episode. My name is Dr. Ramon Goings, host of From A to PhD show and founder of Done Dissertation. And until next time, I wish you all a done dissertation. Take care.